think the thing we need to start with most is recognizing that any of the regulations that might be out there, they are designed and implemented in the European Union, but impact those beyond the EU. So they will impact people, for example, in the UK, but they're extraterritorial, as in Japan, China, the US, Canada, Brazil. For practical purposes, anyone who is seeking to conduct business in the EU needs to conform to whatever the requirements of the specific regulations that are part of their world. So DORA is very much focused on services because it's talking about operational resiliency. That also extends to any what DORA refers to as ICT service providers or third-party ICT service providers. CRA is a little bit different because it's not focused on the resiliency of an operation. The CRA is focused on the conformity of products. There is a strong tendency to go and use a tool like, say, ChatGPT or Copilot or any of the large language models out there. And what gets lost in the conversation is that they are all what's known as generative AI. Their goal is to generate or synthesize new content. It doesn't necessarily know how legislation works in Europe, to know that there are concepts of delegated acts and implementing acts, and that they have the ability to modify things. So be very careful using AI to go and summarize this, particularly if you're using AI as a proxy to legal advice. ChatGPT is not going to accept that liability. And it's your GRC teams or your legal team's responsibility to put in place appropriate guardrails and policies around how you go about complying with what are, quite honestly, complex regulations. So the key message that DORA is communicating, that the AI Act is communicating, that the CRA is communicating, is that fundamentally the self-regulatory environment that has existed for years, where security might be applied as an afterthought or a late stage activity during product development, those days are over. We need to account for cybersecurity at the point of design, at the point of implementation, and we need to have cybersecurity as a core concept be not just something that is performed by a team, but something where all teams have a responsibility, a role in the success of that product within that organization. So one of the big things is that if you get too far ahead of the process, whilst things are being still defined, so technical requirements might not be fully understood. Once you start talking about implementing something within a process, you're talking about making a set of changes to success criteria. If you had to respond to something, one of my most favorite things out of the whole CRA is if your technical organization had to respond to a vulnerability within 24 hours, could you? And for most organizations, the answer is probably not. And that includes all of the disclosures through legal. So the easy answer for most organizations is if you have software and that software powered thing is being offered in Europe, then it's in scope. All software needs to conform except, and the exception list is quite small. If you are conformant to the regulations for cybersecurity for medical devices, you've got to pass. So I will start with some very clear, you should be thinking about these things for DORA, for CRA rather. The first thing is to recognize that there is going to be a cost associated with compliance or conformity. I tend to prefer conformity over compliance because conformity is a little bit more of a process way of thinking. That money is going to need to be spent on something. The something is going to come from the scope. And the technical teams, in conjunction with the regulatory teams within any company, are going to be able to understand what that scope is, because there's a lot of nuance. This is consistent decision making, and that risk is prioritized, because that risk element is really a key component to ensuring that what is secure remains secure throughout its software development, throughout its product lifecycle.